And Town of Ashland, Dr. McGraw.
Present.
Thank you. That concludes the roll call for attendance. We do have a quorum and no remote participants.
Thank you. For the record, Mr. Valdez did request remote participation for the executive committee, but he's not here. Should he come on, we'll certainly welcome him to the meeting. Okay, so we do have a quorum. Let's see. I don't have any public comments at this time. Agenda amendments, I don't think we have anything. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
Second.
So moved, second by voice vote. All those in favor, please indicate. Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Have all board members had an opportunity to review the minutes? Mr. McGraw?
Yes.
You good?
Yes.
You want to move for any approvals or denials?
I move to approve the minutes.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion, second, any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item, number 4, the personnel discussion. So we've talked about, we pushed this back a little bit. We talked about employee compensation. I know there's been some discussions amongst different commission members, particularly executive committee. I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Schipper to talk about the 23 recognitions and the 24 salary adjustments, where the money may come from and what we're looking at. I know there's no surprise that we're all fighting in the region back home to attract and retain qualified personnel, but more importantly, to maintain the folks that we've got that are doing a stellar job. And we feel like there's going to be some opportunity that we're able to take here to make sure that our folks are compensated as well as we can have them compensated within our budget. But I think there's a concern in this organization, like it is in other places, that, folks have opportunities now. So, Ms. Schipper.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
And by the way, I don't mean that anybody has told us they're leaving, right? We're looking at highly qualified people who have options. So I want to be clear about that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That clarification.
We have no planners looking to walk out the door in line. But I just realized my comments when I turned it over to Martha before I rudely interrupted. We don't have a mass exodus. We're just trying to keep up with the times as well. So
Sure.
My apologies for any angst I may have caused.
Thank
So,
you.
Councilman, good morning, sir.
Yeah, I just wanted to be able to give you a briefing of what to expect. We are working currently on developing the, I'll say mid-year, but I realize we're later in that and later than the midpoint of the year. But developing that kind of final FY 2023 forecast for the remainder of this fiscal year. We had held as a placeholder in the current fiscal year budget the opportunity, if our finances looked like they were holding, to be able to provide one-time adjustments, bonuses, if you will, to staff. We had originally thought that could be something that we would be able to achieve and come back to the executive committee in the winter time at the calendar change, but it just didn't seem like, from monitoring kind of our monthly closes, that was the prudent time to do it. However, with the close of quarter 3 for the fiscal year ending March 31, we're feeling pretty good about the status of our finances. They're actually tracking a little bit ahead of where we would have expected them for year to date. And so that is good news. And so our intention would be to come to the Finance Committee on April 25th, when we present the FY 2023 year-end forecast, to include one-time salary adjustments, and that to be awarded at fiscal year end out of this current fiscal year budget. So the process would be, we wanted to just be able to test that approach with you today. If that seems like something that seems reasonable to pursue, we'll run it through our financial modeling and forecast, present that funding strategy to the Finance Committee, and then it would come back to the Executive Committee at your May meeting.
Please, yeah, open
So
forum.
is the adjustment a bonus or a percent salary
For
increase?
this fiscal year, we're proposing a bonus.
Okay.
So it would be a one-time adjustment to the paycheck for
Right,
that, the thinking, I think, Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, but the thinking would be that it would be issued on the June 30th paid payroll. And so that's how we would like to approach that. Now, when we present the budget for fiscal year 2024,
doing-
that's where we would be incorporating
salary
actual
adjustment.
percentage adjustments. Right now, the preliminary modeling is based on what we know to be from what reading in the papers and following local, so Henrico and Richmond, I know, were able to achieve at least on some level the 8% range. And so I also wanted to get feedback from the other jurisdictions about where you are with what you were able to achieve in adjustments. That's been the figure that we've been modeling at this point in time, and wanted to be able to have a discussion with you all this morning about, again, expectations, what you think is appropriate and what we can support.
Yeah,
What
please.
is the percent bonus?
The percent, it's not a percentage, Dan, I don't know if you could.
Yeah, it's not a
Hard
percentage. In the budget, we reserved
Just a
about
flat.
$20,000 as a pool
So it's a flat,
Yeah.
that we would then distribute
Just-
according to
gotcha,
criteria.
okay.
That
Thank
don't
you.
go but so far.
No, it just.
It
You
does.
know, it would be nice if it was larger, but.
And I think the idea is, with the executive committee's leadership, we can look at that. There'll be something in the budget at some point, but, I mean, it's 20 grand, I mean, that is what we're dealing with, so I just want to be fair, it's not like we had a windfall. And some of that was from savings.
So to the extent we can be competitive with our partners, I think if we can get there, say starting at 8%, because I think pretty much all of us are at about 8%. I'm not saying stay there, but at least, yeah.
Yeah, I will say, last fiscal year, I think all of us were disappointed. I think most folks went into the budget season thinking that the awards that we were able to achieve through the budget processes last year were really good, and then the news of inflation hit, weeks later.
Yeah.
And so,
That's right.
I don't think that our employees are feeling unappreciated, but I mean, it's, as you all know, I mean, it's a competitive environment, and we try to balance our compensation with the flexibility and the quality of work and the environment and all of those things, but the bottom line is that in this environment, the compensation is a driving factor in how any staff member is gonna make their decisions. So.
Doc?
I'm supportive of it. I have no questions for it, other than if there's more money, I'd actually like it to go higher.
Thank you. Counselor?
We're kind of in you look at teachers, they got 7%, firefighters, and police got 10% in this budget. So we're kind of right in there. I mean, I think somewhere in that area is fine, as far as that goes. If we have the money for it, we should do that at least.
Thank you. Mr. Vice Chairman?
You gotta be competitive. The thing is to retain what you have. It's a lot more expensive to go get more. So,
It's funny, I talked to somebody the other day about Mr. Byerly, and I said, his business acumen comes out every meeting. You have to remain competitive.
right.
I mean, the private sector, we know that. I mean, with my staff and our team, I mean, I've done mid-year bonuses. One, because I'm grateful, but number two, when the numbers move from July to December, you say, oh my gracious, what just happened? And any compensatory thing that you did in July, it was erased.
It's gone.
It was gone.
Yeah.
And so, good people, you don't wanna go hire more people, and you don't want a revolving door, so, okay.
I think I'll just ask maybe also about, I know from sitting in some of the meetings that have happened in the localities, it's not as profound in this organization because we're smaller, but one of the things that Dan and I have been talking about is the realities of what happens when you have a range of compensation levels. And if you always track on a percentage increase, it doesn't necessarily bring our bottom tier of earners along at the same pace. So we are kind of monitoring that and trying to develop a rational system to be able to make sure that our staff members, particularly where there might be more likelihood of that attrition or churn. And so I'll just share with you that that's something that is on our minds, and we're looking at, we don't know how much we're gonna be able to achieve in kind of maybe a tiered approach to recommending salary adjustments this fiscal year, but I think that that's something that we're gonna need to look at. And just in talking with Dan yesterday, the realities of some of the pluses that we're facing this year, I think we announced last month, we are not seeing a change in our health insurance costs this year, which is a blessing, and frankly remarkable. I think you were shocked at that. So, there's some opportunities there that I think, we're really looking at to make sure that we can keep the stability, but also be able to be mindful of how some of these decisions impacts our staff. A percentage increase is a percentage increase, but it impacts different staff members differently when you look at the net earning that they're achieving. So just something else maybe to let you know that we're monitoring pretty closely.
So do you think that we're gonna see, obviously, the competitive side for entry and retention? I get that. Do you think that with the size of our organization, compression is not always an issue, but you thinking compression is also gonna be an issue for the folks on the lower end scale, more entry side?
Yeah, I think that as this organization has advanced over the last couple of years, we're seeing kind of 3 different categories, and it doesn't necessarily uniformly translate to blocks of people, but I think we've got a challenge with being competitive for people that are interested in elevating their earning and elevating their responsibility. So looking at, our biggest competitor, to be honest with you, is our state agencies. So there's opportunity oftentimes there. It's a compliment certainly to the agency that we oftentimes get poached, but it's also a little bit challenging to be able to fill those shoes. So that's one bucket, and I think that's kind of the primary target there is our kind of mid-level. They're experienced, they've built a good track record of performance, they've built a little bit of a reputation, and they're solid and reliable. So we're looking at that pretty carefully about how to kind of move potentially that block of middle folks into new opportunities. I think our entry-level staff, it's also a similar thing. We have a lot of conversations with students at VCU about their concerns about wanting to enter the public sector, but the realities of economics, make the private sector a lot more attractive. So, we try to make as compelling a case as possible. Chet and I were with one of the seminar classes a couple weeks ago, and then Nicole was with them. We try to share with them kind of the pros of public sector, but it's hard, and we did just lose somebody this spring to the private sector.
We did.
We weren't competitive.
Right, and we couldn't make them,
Yeah.
competitive, so.
So I think that there's a couple different issues going
Sure.
on there.
Can I, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, please.
One of the things we've been really working on in the county over the last several years is doing these career enhancement bonuses.
Yep.
I think that's something, if somebody brings a new skill to the organization that we have already set in advance, this is valuable to us, you're bringing a new skill here, you're increasing your value to the entire organization by doing X, whatever that is. We should definitely talk about having those in place for these jobs, because it's a small thing sometimes, and maybe it can be a small reward, but those can add up over time and really enhance your package, and you get the sense in the organization that you're being valued more, that you are contributing more, and that is worth more to everyone, and there's a self-worth there thing too. So anyway, I just throw that out there.
You're absolutely right, Chris. I think having some type of career ladder is important. The other thing that I think initiative that you can add into that is as folks are moving through, whether it's designations or memberships. Not every staff member can be at every, annual conference everywhere across the country. But if folks, need to pull out and head to something at VCU, or maybe they need to head to something, down in Raleigh, and they're sitting on boards or commissions, or they're just taking, I don't want to say continuing ed, but, because that's in our business, but, where they're advancing themselves, maybe they're getting designations, and then we're putting money towards that. I agree wholeheartedly because it shows you're kind of trying to develop the whole person. And I do think it creates a sense of loyalty to the organization, that you're not just here to knock out work product or whatever. Because you can say what you want to, but I mean, it is extremely competitive. I know at Tech and some of the schools, I mean, the kids in October have already gotten their job offers. I mean, these folks are whatever field they may be in. Their job offers for July of 2023 came in October of 2022. And, a lot of folks don't want to work within the public sector because they feel like, it's tooth and nail, it's a fight. And any raise that you give in the public sector is laid across the newspaper, right? So somebody says, my goodness, I gotta fight for 7%, you know what my grocery bill is? Where if you're in a law firm or whatever, partners meet and figure that out in 90 minutes.
Correct.
And it's different. I mean, we have to have more meshing of minds in the public sector. So, Reverend Nelson, we were just talking about, we have $20,000 that we were looking at allocating towards bonuses. While it's not a great deal of money, just want to get a consensus and see if folks were okay with that. And then we do want to have discussions about remaining competitive for our workforce as it relates to compensation in the next budget. Do you have anything that you want to add to that?
$20,000 total?
No, sir, this is just on a bonus structure, just a one-time bonus structure that we're looking at at Martha's discretion. She'll have a schedule on who and what bonuses would be. Discussion one. Number two is any input that you have on compensatory matters as it relates to us looking at raising some of the standards at PlanRVA for our employee base. So two different discussions. The $20,000 is a one-time bonus, just a care bonus. While it's not a great deal of money, we'd like to disperse that if there's a consensus amongst executive committee and commission members.
I'm good.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, one last thing I wanted to bring up is kind of related to this. I think I can get in there and say it legally because it's part of compensation in a way. So there's been a lot of great interest amongst the commission on using PlanRVA as a hub to get information, be an info bank, help the localities out with specific needs. I met with Chairman Lumpkin and Chairman Carroll last Thursday. It was our second meeting. So the commission's really excited about that, but obviously we may not be looking at bringing on, a bunch of new staff for those types of things. We found an opportunity through NATO, the National Association of Development Organizations, where they house a lot of this information, but there's different dues levels, membership levels. And so for like $2,000 to $4,000 increase in our dues level, we have access to the super secret vault of all the information that they have. So then we get to take it and, make it ours. It's not proprietary. It's paid for, but for $3,000 to $4,000 a year to get that and bring it here without having to hire somebody maybe to manage that program in its infancy seemed like a pretty good cost saving. So I did want to bring that up, that there may be an opportunity for us to increase our membership level at NATO and open up the ability to serve some of the localities who've asked us to serve them in that capacity. So I just wanted to float that out there. Does that sound fiscally responsible to the folks in this room?
That's data, national data, that's local data?
Man, the stuff that these guys and gals pull together, yeah. So, and there could be some opportunity where we could ask them to, I don't know, we could give them a special project, but I think we could say, hey, could you pull data on this and narrow it down, then send it to us? I think there's possibilities of that.
As an example, the Emergency Management Alliance is wanting to do a business forum to reach out to local businesses to be more intentional around resiliency planning. Not our major large employers, but more kind of the small business base. So we've reached out to NATO and we've connected Brett Schwartz, who specializes in some of the economic recovery and resiliency research, to connect with that planning team from emergency management to talk about how an emergency management conversation can be relevant in the business setting. And so that's, just kind of the most recent example about how we're leaning on their team to help us with that research. So it's a little bit of fact-finding about what's happening across the country, but also from a best practices perspective, what resources at the federal level and at the peer-to-peer level can we tap into to not have to reinvent the wheel?
Very good. So we're serving the localities with what they've kind of asked for and demanded without having a cost to it, so. I mean, I'm not a genius, I didn't like think this up, Martha, kind of like, hey, did you know this? And I'm like, hey, I'll take credit for that, so, anyway. But Martha said it much better than I could. So, I think that helps. Anything further on that?
Just that we're also looking at our staff capacity in the meeting that Mr. Davis mentioned with the chairs of the TPO and the CBTA, just kind of one of the practices that we're putting in place is meeting the chairs of those three respective bodies on a fairly regular basis, hopefully maybe once a quarter or so, just to be able to kind of make sure that that connection is happening. And from a staffing perspective, that PlanRVA is fulfilling its obligations, but also meeting expectations. So I think we had a good conversation a lot around this local technical assistance issue that we've been talking about here. And you'll see evidence of how we want to present an investment strategy in that. Building capacity and new positions from a planning perspective, but also thinking, and we'll talk about this in the full commission meeting, about the opportunities to pursue grants through the federal infrastructure bill and what that staff capacity demand will be on our end. So you'll see a request for new positions as well in the upcoming fiscal year budget.
And just to throw this out there, we did talk with Mr. Carroll. They're looking to, still looking for an executive director for CVTA. We did have a very cordial conversation. Kevin's a great guy, but said, hey, you do understand at some point some of the things that are being supported at CVTA right now are actually being supported by PlanRVA. And we're all family, right? We love everybody. But at some point, when Thanksgiving's over, you gotta go home, right? And Kevin got that. Kevin got it, and we're totally fine doing some of the administrative support, but I don't know if anybody's seen their budget, but they have it. So those types of things, while they're still working through the trenches, a lot of what's going on at CVTA, Kevin probably wouldn't like me saying this, a lot of things that are going on at CVTA are being supported right here in this building by PlanRVA folks, right? So I'll leave that there so we don't have an uncomfortable Christmas dinner, but he totally gets it, and they are working as.
Does he get to take the leftovers?
Yeah. He kind of came in with a bag of chips and a six-pack of Natty Light. It's kind of, next thing you know, he was the first one at the turkey, so I love Kevin. But they're having their challenges, there's no question about it. I'm making Martha feel uncomfortable.
I appreciate the Thanksgiving visit, but we're talking about real back office supports that are being provided
Oh, yes, ma'am.
by PlanRVA, and
No
there
question.
should be some compensation for that.
So
I mean, I don't mean, it doesn't have to, it can be considerably discounted, but
We are being compensated.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
know
No,
what
we are
everybody-
being-
But I think the reality
All
is
right,
that
okay.
But I have a
we
different- but I have a different view.
Yes, we have not adjusted our capacity.
Correct.
I got you.
to be
Okay,
able
thank you. I
to-
was just,
So we entered a 5-year agreement with the CBTA, and so I think the conversation largely was around, okay, we've got the security, if you will, of that 5-year agreement. We need to scale to be at the
Gotcha.
right
Okay.
level to
That's-
meet the needs
I'm
of.
That's my view. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think if somebody was to come in and look at it from a fiscal standpoint, you might look at the contract and you may say, hey, yes, it's in writing, but the support being provided, there's a disparity between.
I got you.
Yeah, so we're not trying to pull the rug out from anybody, but we just,
They can come back for Christmas.
they can come back for Christmas, but they gotta bring some gifts.
A
Right.
lot.
Yeah, right, so, that was a legal opinion, they gotta express. So I think that's the case, and look, I had concerns that, how are we gonna keep the daylight between the two organizations, and not have, this idea that they just kind of commingled themselves into a CVTA kind of deal. Interestingly enough, that hasn't happened. What has happened is, I was getting ready to make a very bold statement that would sound offensive, but there's a lot of things going on in this building that are keeping CVTA moving, which is great. I don't think there's a lack of leadership there. They've got to get an executive director. They got a lot of things they're doing. It's a new organization, all of that. So with that, sometimes you got to pony up and say, hey, not only on the fiscal side, but also how we're going to allocate some of this workload. So it is not an adversarial relationship at all. I think, Martha, you correct me if you think this is an incorrect statement. But I think Mr. Carroll got that. I think he recognized that. And I think they'd like to have that worked out too, but it is worth mentioning from a leadership standpoint, from one leadership team to another. So, and it was mentioned and received well.
Yeah, it was a great conversation.
Yeah, so. Anything else?
No.
All right, thank you, ma'am. With that, there's no objection, we'll move into closed session. Closed session, I moved to enter closed section pursuant to FOI section 2.2-3711A29 to discuss a contract involving the expenditure of public funds. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We are gonna go to the
Is
next
there-
one, you think?
Do we need to?
Well,
don't
if
have
he's not
anybody
on,
online?
yeah, I guess if Mr.
You don't need to go into a different room.
Waters, right, 'cause
Yeah,
Mr.
we can just pause the
Pause it?
Zoom.
Okay, yeah, you can just say you're.
There we go.
Thanks, yeah, because Mr. Waters wasn't on.
So,
Right,
should I
he's still not,
pause
he's
the live?
He's still not?
Yeah,
Okay, well then
please
let's
pause
just